Anybody else in that quarterback room or team or not dissing anybody, but just you got the NYPD, dog.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it that way, Chico, because like we talk about on TMR Live all the time, people be taking stuff as a diss that's not a diss.
Yeah.
It's levels, man. Like we talked about before here, there are some people in the world that can see further sitting down than you can see standing up. And it doesn't make you a lesser person to recognize that.
Mm.
And Shedeur is one of those people with a gravitas, with a gravitational pull. His charisma has a magnetism to it that attracts people. Now, that don't mean that somebody else ain't this or somebody else ain't that. That's just acknowledging what he has been gifted with. And you can acknowledge somebody's gifts without it meaning you're pissing on somebody else's.
Shedeur Sanders walked down a street in New York City during ESPYS week, and even an on-duty NYPD officer stopped what he was doing just to get a picture with him. Not a fan, not a random bystander. A police officer on duty in the middle of doing his job, deciding this moment was worth pausing for. And according to two respected commentators breaking this down, that reaction alone tells you something the Cleveland Browns front office needs to be paying very close attention to. So here's the real question worth asking right now. If literally nobody else in that Browns quarterback room could generate a reaction like that, what does it actually mean for how this organization should be building around him? Stick around, because this conversation goes a lot deeper than one viral street moment. There's a scientific comparison being made about Shedeur that explains exactly why the environment around him might matter more than people realize. There's a specific detail about rank and authority tied to that NYPD officer that makes this moment even more remarkable than it first appears. And there's a pointed comparison between how Shedeur talks about his current coaching staff versus how he never talked about the previous one. Keep watching, because these pieces connect into a much bigger picture about what Shedeur actually needs to thrive. Let's start with what actually happened in New York. During ESPYS week, footage started circulating of Shedeur walking through the city, and the reaction from everyone around him, fans, bystanders, and eventually that police officer, was immediate and overwhelming. People were locking in on him instantly, wanting photos, wanting a moment, treating him like an established superstar rather than a second-year quarterback still fighting for a starting job. And it gets more interesting from there. Because instead of just reacting to the clip on the surface, the conversation shifted into something much more practical. One of the commentators made it clear he wasn't interested in comparing this reaction to what other quarterbacks around the league might get in similar situations. Wait, what? Because his actual point was sharper than that. He said plainly that nobody currently in the Browns quarterback room, nobody on that entire roster, generates that kind of reaction. Not close. Now here's where it gets genuinely interesting. Because that observation led directly into a bigger argument. If Shedeur is already operating at that level of cultural magnetism, the organization needs to start treating him accordingly, because leaning into that identity, instead of downplaying it, could actually make him even better. We'll come back to exactly why that argument holds up scientifically, not just emotionally. But first, you need to hear the specific comparison being used to describe how Shedeur actually performs under different conditions, because it reframes this entire conversation.
Shedeur Sanders, he's any chemist out there, any chemical engineers out there.
Okay.
Shedeur Sanders is an accelerant. Sometimes you can add something to something and it accelerates what you have. The more love you give him, the more he actually gives you. He performs so much better in environments that are supportive and nurturing. That don't mean now he a bum when it ain't. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, he goes out his way for people that believe in him.
Because right when this conversation could have stayed a simple reaction to a viral clip, one of the commentators introduced a comparison that completely reframes how the Browns should be thinking about Shedeur. He called him an accelerant. Think about what that word actually means in a chemical sense. An accelerant doesn't create a reaction on its own. It speeds up and intensifies whatever reaction is already happening around it. And that's exactly the argument being made about Shedeur specifically. The more genuine support and belief he receives from the people around him, the more he actually gives back in return. That's not saying he's incapable of succeeding without that support. It's saying he performs at a noticeably higher level in environments that are actively nurturing and invested in him, compared to environments where he's treated with suspicion or distance. That's where the situation gets genuinely revealing, because that theory connects directly to something Shedeur has reportedly said about this current coaching staff, that he'd run through a wall for this new coach. And the pointed observation made about that statement was simple but sharp. He never said anything close to that about the previous coaching staff, even without directly criticizing anyone by name. Think about what that contrast actually implies. Because a player's willingness to give that kind of effort and loyalty isn't random. It's earned, built through actual relationship, actual communication, actual investment from the people leading him. And if Shedeur is already speaking about this new staff with that level of trust, this early into their relationship, that's a meaningful signal about the environment Todd Monken and his staff have managed to build in a very short amount of time. Now, if that's all there was to this story, it would already be a compelling argument. But it gets deeper, because there's also a smaller, easy-to-miss detail about that NYPD officer specifically. Based on the visible rank insignia on his uniform, this wasn't just any patrol officer. This appeared to be someone holding actual rank and authority, the kind of position that doesn't typically stop for casual photo requests during an active shift. And here's the detail that should completely change how people view this entire moment. Because it wasn't Shedeur seeking out that interaction. According to the breakdown of the clip, it was the officer's own team specifically flagging the opportunity, making sure someone captured that photo because they understood exactly who was walking past them. That's not manufactured hype. That's organic recognition from people whose job has nothing to do with football, choosing to treat that moment as significant on their own. Now here's my hottest take on this entire story. The Cleveland Browns front office has spent months treating Shedeur's massive personal brand like something to quietly manage rather than something to actively build around. But if the accelerant theory holds up, and every piece of evidence from this offseason suggests it does, the smartest move this organization can make isn't distancing themselves from that magnetism. It's leaning directly into it. Every ounce of belief and support this coaching staff pours into him is reportedly coming back multiplied in effort, loyalty, and performance. And that's exactly why this NYPD moment matters, far beyond a fun viral clip. It's proof that Shedeur's pull extends into spaces that have absolutely nothing to do with football, spaces where people aren't required to care about the Browns' quarterback competition at all, and they're stopping anyway. To recap, Shedeur Sanders generated a reaction from an on-duty New York police officer that nobody else in his own quarterback room could realistically produce. That reaction ties directly into a broader theory about how genuine support and belief actually accelerates his performance, backed up by his own comments about running through a wall for this new coaching staff specifically. And even small details like the officer's own rank and his team's decision to flag the moment reinforce just how organic and widespread this magnetism actually is. My prediction? The more this coaching staff continues building a genuinely supportive environment around Shedeur, the more that accelerant effect is going to show up on the field, not just in viral moments off of it. Drop a comment. Do you buy the theory that Shedeur Sanders performs significantly better in supportive environments, or do you think that's giving him too much of an excuse? This is Gridiron Insights. We'll see you in the next one.